So this is where we grew up. And then in 1989 and 1990, 91, it was my first years in college. And literally the entire world just transformed before my very eyes. Understand, you grow up your whole life and like the whole world is about the Soviet Union, and all of a sudden the Soviet Union no longer exists. My favorite memory of that is that I was actually taking a course that fall by a Soviet expert at, I think it was in Gainesville, Florida. And this poor guy's entire career came crumbling down over a 3-month period as the Soviet Union collapsed. It's like all these years of work, you have a PhD in Soviet studies, and now the Soviet doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know what he did after that. I need to check up on that guy. But anyways, the point is the whole world transformed. And there was this effusive exuberance, the belief that the Cold War is over, we won, and now the entire world is going to become just like us. Free enterprise democracies. That was a very idealistic thing to believe. But here's the other conclusion they made. And that is that nationhood no longer mattered when it came to economics. That right now the world would no longer have borders. It wouldn't matter where things were made. What mattered is they were made in the most efficient place. And it became mantra. And look, I think it became part of Republican orthodoxy for a very long time, an orthodoxy that I came up in, which was it's okay if productive capacity moves to another country. Because what that will do is it will free up our workers to do work that's even more productive and pays them more. It was the famous or the infamous idea that who cares that you lost your job at a factory, you're going to learn how to code. And then you're going to make a lot more money doing that. Well, it was completely unrealistic, number one, and became incredibly disruptive that that decision was made. But here's the other implication of it. It robbed the nation of its industrial capacity, of its ability to make things. And its industrial capacity and its ability to make things has two ramifications. The first is it hurts your economy. It hurts your country. It robs people of jobs, and the transition is not nearly as easy, but it also ends up becoming corrosive and destructive to communities. And as a result, we had a Rust Belt. We had places that were gutted. And we had families that for generations had worked in a certain field or for a certain company, and all of a sudden that company or that field vanished because it moved somewhere else where it was cheaper to do, and those jobs were gone, and obviously became incredibly destructive, not just for the United States, by the way, but for many nations in the industrialized West. But the other thing it robbed us of is the ability to make things, which is a national security impairment, and a very significant one. If you go back to the World War II, the admiral who had been tasked with planning Pearl Harbor thought it was a really bad idea. He went through and obviously followed orders, but he thought it was a very bad idea because he had spent a substantial amount of time studying in the United States when he was younger. And his conclusion was that attacking the United States was a bad idea because even though at the time militarily we were behind the Japanese, certainly technologically and otherwise, we had factories and we had access to raw material and resources. And he knew that over time, once those factories and those raw materials were put to the war machine, the Japanese would not be able to keep up. And you could very well argue that the end of World War II, that the victory in World War II, both in Europe and especially in Asia, was the result of America's industrial capacity. When the Japanese lost the plane, they lost the plane. When we lost the plane, and their planes were better than ours for a long time, when we lost the plane, we were able to produce hundreds to replace it. Industrial capacity mattered in terms of national security. And that's never changed. That's always been true. And so today what you find is because of all of those years of neglect, because of the loss of industrial capacity, we didn't just undermine our society. We didn't just undermine our domestic economy. We've undermined our position in the world. And what you will find, and what we find even now, is that increasingly on geopolitical issue after geopolitical issue, it is access to raw material and industrial capacity that is at the core both of the decisions that we're making and the areas that we're prioritizing.